Hello, this is Mia. Today I want to tell you the story of my trip to Egypt. It was one of the most beautiful and surprising trips of my life. I saw famous monuments, met kind people, ate delicious food, and felt very small in front of thousands of years of history. I will speak as if I am talking to you, and I will keep the language slow and clear. Let's begin. For many years I had a dream. I wanted to see the pyramids with my own eyes. When I was a child, I saw pictures of Egypt in books and on TV. The pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx, the Nile River, and statues of mysterious pharaohs. But I always thought, Egypt is far. Maybe one day, but not now. Then, one winter, I felt tired of my routine. I worked a lot, I lived in a busy city, and my days all looked the same. One evening, I was on my sofa with a cup of tea and my laptop. I watched a video of a travel blogger walking near the pyramids at sunset. The sky was orange, the stones were golden, and I could almost feel the heat through the screen. Something inside me said, "Why not now? Why not you?" I opened a new tab and started to look at flights to Cairo. The prices were not impossible. I had some savings, I had vacation days. I took a deep breath and booked a ticket for 2 weeks in Egypt. I decided that on this trip, I wanted to see the most famous monuments, eat Egyptian food, and also meet local people to understand their daily life. At that moment, my adventure began. The flight to Cairo felt long and short at the same time. I was excited but also a little nervous. It was my first time in North Africa and the Middle East. When the plane started to descend, I looked out of the window. I saw a sea of lights, a huge city in the dark, and somewhere, far away, a dark line that was the Nile. At the airport, the air was warm and dry. There were many sounds, announcements, people speaking Arabic and English, and the rolling noise of suitcase wheels. I passed passport control, collected my bag, and went outside to find my driver. I had booked an airport transfer with my hotel because I didn't want to worry on my first night. A man with a sign that had my name on it smiled and waved. "Welcome to Egypt, Mia," he said. "My name is Karim." We walked to the car. As we drove into the city, I looked through the window. The streets were full of cars and buses. Horns were everywhere. Shops were open, even though it was late. I saw small restaurants, colorful lights, and people sitting outside drinking tea and talking. Cairo felt alive. My hotel was in Giza, not far from the pyramids. It was a small hotel, not a big luxury one, but it had something important: a rooftop with a view. When I arrived, the receptionist said, "You are just in time. Come, you can see the pyramids at night." I followed him up the stairs to the roof. And there, in the dark, with some lights shining on them, I saw them for the first time. The pyramids. They were bigger than I had imagined, but at the same time, they were very simple. Just huge triangles of stone standing quietly under the stars. I felt a strange mix of happiness and peace. That night, I slept very well. The next morning, I woke up early. The sky was already bright and I could hear the city waking up. Cars, voices, and birds. I went up to the rooftop again for breakfast. The hotel served a simple Egyptian breakfast: flat bread called baladi bread, white cheese, olives, tomatoes, cucumbers, and a dish called ful medames. Fulmedames is a warm dish of cooked fava beans with olive oil, lemon, and sometimes garlic and spices. The waiter said, "You must try this, it's very traditional." I put some ful on a piece of bread, added some tomato and cheese, and took a bite. It was simple, warm, and comforting. The beans were soft, the lemon gave a fresh taste, and the bread was perfect. I drank a strong black tea with sugar and a bit of mint. While I ate, I looked at the pyramids in daylight. They looked different from the night before. Now I could see the color of the stones, the desert around them, and tourists on camels in the distance. I felt ready for my first day of exploring. At 9 o'clock, a local guide came to the hotel to meet me. His name was Ahmed. He had a friendly face and a calm voice. "Today," he said, "I will show you the pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx, and a bit of the desert." We walked together to the entrance of the site. When we passed the gate, the world changed. The noise of the city was behind us, and in front of us was open space, sand, and the giant shapes of the pyramids. Ahmed told me about the three main pyramids: the Great Pyramid of Khufu, and the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure. He explained how old they were, how the blocks of stone were cut and moved, and how people still don't completely understand how they were built. His English was clear, and he used simple words. He stopped often so I could take photos and just look. At one point, he said, "Now you will do the classic tourist thing." I laughed. "What is the classic tourist thing?" I asked. He pointed to a group of camels. "You will ride a camel into the desert to see the pyramids from far away," he said. "Only if you want, of course." I hesitated for a second. The camels looked tall and a bit scary, but I decided to try. A man helped me climb onto the camel's back. When the camel stood up, I felt like I was on the top of a moving tower. But after a few minutes, I relaxed. We moved slowly through the sand. The city became smaller behind us, and in front of us, the pyramids stood alone, like ships made of stone in a sea of yellow. The air was dry and hot. The only sounds were the wind, the camel steps, and sometimes the voice of the camel man. We stopped at a point with a perfect view. Ahmed took my phone and said, "Now I will take the famous picture with all three pyramids behind you." I smiled at the camera and tried to remember that moment. Later, we visited the Sphinx. It was smaller than I had imagined, but it felt very old and wise. Ahmed told me stories about its nose, about legends, and about tourists who try to kiss it in photos. We walked around it slowly, stopping in the shade when the sun was too strong. By the time we left the site, my feet were tired, my skin was warm from the sun, and my head was full of images and information. It was only my first morning, and already I had seen one of the greatest wonders in the world. After the pyramids, Ahmed asked, "Are you hungry?" "Yes, very," I answered. "Good," he said. "Now you will try our national street dish, koshari." We went to a small, busy restaurant in Giza. People were sitting at simple tables. The air smelled of tomato sauce, fried onions, and something spicy. Ahmed ordered for both of us. Soon, a man brought two big bowls. Koshari looks like a wild mix of many things: pasta, rice, lentils, chickpeas, tomato sauce, and a generous amount of crispy fried onions on top. On the table, there were bottles of vinegar with garlic and spicy sauce. Ahmed showed me how to eat it. "You mix everything," he said, "and you add a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of chili if you like it spicy." I took a forkful. The taste was surprising. It was simple, but so satisfying. The lentils and chickpeas made it rich, The tomato sauce was a bit sweet, and the fried onions gave a crunchy texture. It was heavy, but in a good way. "This is comfort food," I said. "Exactly," Ahmed smiled. "And it is cheap, so almost everyone loves it." We ate in silence for a moment, just enjoying the food. Then Ahmed told me about his life in Cairo, about his children, and about his favorite places in Egypt. I felt lucky to hear about the country not only from books, but from someone who lived there. In the afternoon, I rested for a few hours at the hotel. The sun was strong, and I needed some time to process all the impressions. In the evening, I decided to do something a little bit touristy, but special. I booked a dinner cruise on the Nile. The boat was not too big, and it was decorated with lights. Inside, there were tables with white cloths, a small stage, and big windows to see the river. We started to move slowly on the dark water. On both sides, Cairo was shining with thousands of lights. I made a plate from the buffet: grilled chicken, rice, salad with cucumber and tomato, and a dish of baked eggplant with tomato and garlic. Everything was full of flavor. There was also a red drink that many people were having. The waiter explained, "It's called karkadeh. It's made from hibiscus flowers." It was cold, a little sour, and very refreshing. While we ate, a man played the oud, a traditional instrument, and later a dancer in a colorful spinning skirt performed the tanura dance. The music was loud, the colors were bright, and I felt both like a tourist and like someone connected to the city for a moment. At one point, I went out to the open deck. The air was softer now. I could hear the water, the distant horns of cars, and the music from the boat. I thought, I am really on the Nile, the river from all the history books. It felt unreal and completely real at the same time. The next day, I went to central Cairo to visit the Egyptian Museum. The building was old and pink, with big columns in front. Inside, it was like a treasure box. There were statues of pharaohs and gods, coffins made of wood and gold, and rooms full of small objects, jewelry, scarabs, pots, and tools. I spent a long time in the section for Tutankhamun. His golden mask was more beautiful than any picture. The gold was soft and warm in color, and the eyes looked calm. I stood there silently with many other visitors. No one spoke. We all just looked. After the museum, I walked in Old Cairo. The streets were narrow and full of life. I passed old mosques, churches, and small shops selling spices, perfume, and souvenirs. At one corner, I saw a woman making falafel in the street. The smell was irresistible. I bought a small sandwich, a piece of flatbread, falafel balls, tomato, cucumber, and tahini sauce. The falafel was crispy outside and soft inside, green with herbs like parsley and coriander. It was one of the best things I ate on the whole trip. I sat on a low wall and ate slowly, watching people walk by. A little girl looked at me with curiosity. "Where are you from?" she asked in English. I told her, and she smiled and said, "Welcome to Egypt." Then she ran back to her mother. That simple moment made me feel very welcome. In the late afternoon, I went to Khan el-Khalili, the famous bazaar of Cairo. It was like entering another world. The streets were full of shops with colorful lamps, gold and silver jewelry, scarves, carpets, and small statues of pharaohs and cats. Shop owners called to me, "Welcome! Where are you from? Just look, no pressure." I walked slowly, trying to see everything without getting lost. Sometimes I stopped to look at something more closely. The sellers were very good at starting conversations. One man showed me handmade copper plates with drawings of pyramids and camels. "Very good quality," he said. "For you, I make special price." I was shy about bargaining, but in Khan el-Khalili it is normal. We played the little game of prices, smiling the whole time, and I finally bought a small plate as a souvenir. After some time, the noise and the colors were a bit too much. I looked for a quiet place and found a small traditional cafe with wooden chairs and old mirrors on the walls. I ordered mint tea. The glass came with fresh mint leaves inside. The tea was hot, sweet, and very aromatic. At the table next to me, two old men were playing backgammon and arguing gently about the game. The air smelled of tea, tobacco from water pipes, and old wood. I felt that I was sitting in a place where thousands of conversations had happened before mine. After a few days in Cairo, I wanted to see more of Egypt. I decided to go to Luxor, the city of temples and tombs. Instead of taking a plane, I chose the night train to have a little adventure. At the station, there were many people, suitcases and voices. I found my carriage and my seat. The train was old but comfortable enough. As we left Cairo, I saw the lights of the city slowly disappear. Later, I saw only darkness, sometimes a small village, sometimes a light far away. I tried to sleep, but I also liked listening to the rhythm of the train and imagining the Nile not far from us. In the early morning, I opened my eyes to see green fields and palm trees outside. We were in Upper Egypt now. The air felt different, warmer and softer. When we arrived in Luxor, the station was smaller than Cairo's, but very busy. I took a taxi to a small guest house on the west bank of the Nile. The owner, a friendly man called Hassan, welcomed me with a big smile. "Welcome to Luxor, Mia," he said. "We have breakfast on the roof. You can see the Nile from there." My room in Luxor was simple but cozy. There was a bed, a fan, a small bathroom, and a balcony with a view of the river. On the roof terrace, they served breakfast: bread, cheese, jam, eggs, and strong tea. From there, I could see the Nile, calm and wide, with small boats called feluccas sailing slowly. On the other side of the river, I saw the city of Luxor and the big temple near the water. On my side, the west bank, there were fields, palm trees, and behind them the desert hills where the tombs were hidden. Hassan told me, "Today you can visit the Valley of the Kings and the Temple of Hatshepsut. Tomorrow, maybe you can see Karnak and Luxor Temple on the east bank." I agreed happily. I felt that Luxor would be one of the highlights of my trip. In the morning, a local driver took me and two other tourists to the Valley of the Kings. The road crossed green fields and then climbed slowly into the desert hills. The valley itself looked dry and empty. If I didn't know, I would never imagine that so many famous tombs were hidden under the ground. We walked along a path with the sun already hot. With our ticket, we could enter several tombs. From outside, each tomb was just an opening in the rock with a simple entrance. But inside, the world changed. The first tomb I visited had walls painted in bright colors: yellow, blue, red, and green. There were pictures of gods and goddesses, boats, stars, and hieroglyphs. The ceiling was painted like the night sky. I walked slowly down the corridor, feeling the cool air and the silence. At the end, there was a big room with a stone sarcophagus. I couldn't believe that these scholars were thousands of years old. In another tomb, the art was different, but the feeling was the same: old, mysterious, and peaceful. I tried to imagine the people who built these tombs, the pharaohs who were buried here, and the life along the Nile when these paintings were fresh. Outside again, the sun felt even stronger, but my mind was still in the underground world. Next, we visited the temple of Hatshepsut. This temple is built against a high cliff with terraces and columns that look very elegant. Hatshepsut was one of the few female pharaohs, and her temple felt different to me. The lines were simple and clean. The place was open and bright. We climbed the ramps from one level to another, looking at more wall reliefs and statues. Our local guide in Luxor, a young woman called Salma, explained Hatshepsut's story. I liked that my guide here was a woman. She spoke with pride about a strong queen from her own history. From the top terrace, we had a beautiful view of the valley, the green fields in the distance, and the Nile like a thin blue line. We stood there in the hot wind, silent for a moment. I felt that I was standing between life and death, between the desert and the river. After a long morning, I was hungry again. Salma asked, "Do you want to eat in a tourist restaurant, or do you want to try a home-cooked meal with a local family?" "Home-cooked," I answered without thinking. We walked through a small village with mud brick houses, colorful doors, and children playing in the street. We entered a simple house with a big room and low cushions on the floor. A woman in a long dress and a headscarf welcomed us with a warm smile. Her name was Fatma. She spoke a little English, and Salma helped us communicate. We sat on the floor and she brought different dishes: rice with small noodles, a stew of okra and meat in tomato sauce, salad with cucumber, tomato, and onion, and fresh flat bread. There was also a plate of grilled eggplant with garlic and lemon that was incredibly tasty. We ate together, using bread to take the food, laughing when I made small mistakes with the bread and dropped some rice. Fatma's little son showed me his school book with English words. He pointed to a picture of a cat and said, "Cat." I pointed to myself and said, "Nia." He laughed. After the meal, Fatma brought sweet tea and small pieces of sweet pastry with honey and nuts. I felt full, not only in my stomach, but in my heart. This lunch was one of the best parts of my trip, not because of the monuments, but because of the people. The next day, I took a small boat across the Nile to the east bank. The water was calm, and the city was shining in the sun. My first stop was Karnak Temple. It is not one temple, but a huge complex of temples, halls, and obelisks. When I entered the great hypostyle hall, I almost stopped breathing. There were 134 giant columns, each one like a stone tree. The light came from above, between the columns, creating patterns of sun and shadow. I walked slowly between these stone giants, touching the cool surface with my hand. The walls and columns were covered with carvings and hieroglyphs. Some still had a bit of color. It felt like walking inside a stone forest. Later, I sat on a low wall and watched the sun go down. The stones changed color from yellow to orange to soft pink. I thought about how many sunsets these columns had seen. We stayed in Karnak until it was almost dark. The temple looked even more magical with lights on the walls and the night sky above. From Karnak, I took a short ride to Luxor temple. It is closer to the city, and at night it is beautifully lit. The contrast between the ancient temple and the modern city outside was strong. Inside, the atmosphere was calm. Families walked slowly, children ran between the columns, and tourists took photos. I liked one courtyard especially. It had tall columns, a few statues, and the dark blue sky above with some stars. I sat on a stone for a long time, just looking and listening. I could hear many languages around me: Arabic, English, French, German, and others I didn't recognize. All these people from different countries came to this place to see the same stones, to feel the same history. It made the world feel big and small at the same time. On my last morning in Luxor, I woke up very early. The sky was still gray and the air was cool. Hassan, the guest house owner, had organized a short felucca ride for me before my train. A felucca is a traditional sailboat with a triangular sail. We went down to the river and I climbed carefully onto the boat. The sailor, a young man with a quiet smile, raised the sail. The wind caught it and we started to move. The water made soft sounds against the boat. The city was still half asleep. I could see some people on the bank, but it was peaceful. The sky slowly changed from gray to pink to blue. I watched the light on the water, the palm trees, and the temples far away. I thought about everything I had seen in the last days: the pyramids, the Sphinx, the museum, the bazaar, the tombs and temples, the families, the food. Egypt was not only a place of ancient stones. It was full of life, smells, tastes, and warm people. When we returned to the bank, I felt calm and grateful. I took the train back to Cairo, watching the green fields and villages pass by. Back in the big city, I spent my last day buying a few small gifts: spices, a small papyrus painting, and some tea. In the evening, I went one last time to the rooftop of my hotel in Giza. The pyramids were there again, silent and strong. The sky was dark, with many stars. I thought about Mia, who arrived here 2 weeks before, a little nervous and curious. Now I was still curious, but also full of memories. I had eaten fool, koshari, falafel, home-cooked okra stew, sweet pastries with honey, and drunk mint tea and hibiscus juice. I had met people like Karim, the driver, Ahmed, the guide, Salma, the young woman guide, Hassan, the guest house owner, Fatma and her family, and many others whose names I didn't know, but whose smiles I remembered. I had seen some of the most beautiful monuments in the world, and they were even more impressive in real life than in any book. The next day, on the plane back home, I looked one last time at the land below. The Nile was a long, thin line with green on both sides, and then the desert. I knew that this trip changed something in me. It made the world feel bigger, but also more reachable. It reminded me that history is not just in books. It is under our feet, around us, and in the stories of people we meet. My name is Mia, and this was the story of my journey through Egypt. Thank you for listening. I hope one day you can travel too, maybe to Egypt, maybe somewhere else, and create your own story. Until next time.